I want to tell you a story that sounds, well, completely made up. It's about how one of the world's most destructive pests became an environmental hero. Yeah, this is the absolutely wild tale of how China used rabbits to turn a massive desert green.
So, to set the scene, just think about this. On one side of the planet, you've got Australia, where 200 million rabbits are running wild. They're a legit plague, causing all sorts of ecological damage. But then, you look at China, and they intentionally imported over 4 million rabbits, not as pets, not for food, but as a key part of an environmental solution. How does that even make sense?
That's the big question, right? How can the exact same creature be a total nightmare in one place and an ecological savior in another? Well, the answer is a fantastic lesson in thinking about problems in a whole new way.
Okay, so our story takes place in China's Kubuqi Desert. And this wasn't just some static patch of sand. Oh no, it had a nickname, the Sea of Death. And for good reason. It was actively expanding, literally swallowing up good, fertile farmland year after year.
You know, there's a word for this. It's called desertification. And in Kubuqi, it was happening on a scale that was just hard to wrap your head around. For decades, the government had thrown everything they had at it. They built sand control stations, they planted trees, but that sea of sand was just too powerful. It kept winning.
And just to give you an idea of the speed we're talking about, every single year the desert claimed another 500,000 acres of land. That's a mind-boggling amount of productive earth just gone. The situation was getting pretty desperate. And that's when this one guy, a local entrepreneur named Wang Wenbiao, stepped in with an idea that pretty much everyone thought was insane. He decided he was going to invest his own money to do the impossible, plant a forest in the middle of a moving desert.
Now, his first plan was actually pretty simple, but it was also kind of genius. He didn't just stick trees in the sand. First, his team created these big grids of square windbreaks using dry bushes. This gave the little saplings a fighting chance. Then, inside those squares, he planted hardy willow trees. And these weren't just any trees. Their roots can dig an unbelievable 300 feet down to find water. And you know what? For a few years, it actually started working. The trees were surviving. But this created a brand new, massive problem. See, for the willow wood to be valuable, you have to constantly prune the new shoots. Trying to do that by hand for millions of trees in a huge remote desert, it was just way too expensive. The whole project was about to fall apart.
Okay, and this is where the story gets really, really cool. The solution to this giant, expensive problem wasn't some new machine. It wasn't a bigger workforce. It was a living, breathing, self-replicating engine.
Yep, it was the Rex rabbit. Now, this is a specific breed, and it's known for having this incredibly soft, valuable fur, almost like an otter's. But his fur wasn't the main reason it was brought here. Its appetite was. And what they created was this perfect, virtuous cycle. First off, the Rex rabbits absolutely love to eat the exact willow shoots that needed pruning. So boom, you've got free, 24/7 maintenance that also makes the trees more valuable. Second, their waste is basically a natural fertilizer, turning that useless sand into rich, fertile soil. Third, and this is critical, they can't digest grass seeds, so their manure spreads seeds all over the desert, planting new vegetation for free. And on top of all of that, their fur created a whole new industry for the local people. It's just brilliant.
So, what happens when you unleash this rabbit-powered green machine on a desert? Well, over the next 30 years, the results were, frankly, unbelievable.
The project has successfully reclaimed 1/3 of the entire desert. That's over 6,000 square kilometers. We're talking about an area bigger than some small countries that has been turned from barren sand back into a living, green landscape. The Sea of Death was actually retreating. And this wasn't just an environmental victory. It was a huge economic one, too. Before this all started, the local people trying to survive here made basically zero income. Now, with new jobs in farming the trees, raising the rabbits, and even organic agriculture on the new fertile land, the average farmer's annual income has shot up to almost $10,000. In total, it's estimated that 100,000 people have been lifted out of poverty. Their lives are completely different. People who had been forced to flee the desert were now actually coming back to build new lives.
So, let's circle back to that big question from the beginning. Why are rabbits a plague in Australia but a blessing in China? It all comes down to one word: control. In Australia, a couple of rabbits got loose in the wild with no natural predators, and the population just exploded. In China, they were introduced into a carefully managed system where they had a specific job to do as part of a much bigger plan.
You'd think that turning a desert green and pulling 100,000 people out of poverty would be the end of the story, right? But the crazy thing is, the ingenuity in Kubuqi just kept going. It evolved.
On the land they had already reclaimed, they built something else that's just mind-blowing. It's the world's largest solar panel image, according to Guinness World Records. It's a gigantic solar farm with nearly 5 million panels, and they arranged them in the shape of a galloping horse that is so big you can see it from space.
And of course, they brought the rabbits into this new plan. The solar panels create shade, which allows grass to grow underneath them. The rabbits then eat that grass, providing free lawn mowing services for the solar farm. So now the exact same piece of land is fighting desertification, generating clean energy, and producing valuable fur, all at the same time. It's that virtuous cycle all over again, but on a whole new level.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? I mean, the Kubuqi model isn't just a cool local story. It offers a really powerful lesson for the rest of the world.
This whole idea has a name. It's called an eco-economic revolution. And it's the simple but profound idea that you don't have to choose between helping the environment and helping people's bank accounts. You can actually design systems where healing the planet is the engine for economic growth, and economic growth helps heal the planet.
And look, this isn't just some nice idea for the future. This is urgent. Right now, a shocking 40% of the world's land is threatened by desertification. This is a global crisis affecting billions of people. But what the Kubuqi model shows us is that it's not an impossible problem to solve.
And that leaves us with one last really powerful thought. The success in Kubuqi proves that when you combine smart, nature-based ideas with human creativity, you can reverse even the most serious environmental damage. So if we can bring a place called the Sea of Death back to life, what other so-called wastelands out there are just waiting for their own rabbit-powered revolution?